Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jane Santagrossi, President of the Champaign County League of Women Voters. I'd like to welcome you to our first Keeping It Local of our 2024 to 25 year. Our league hosts Keeping It Local every fourth Wednesday of the month from August to April with a break at the holidays. Besides tonight's program, we'll be tackling mis- and disinformation, talking about electing a president through the popular vote, not the Electoral College, ranked choice voting, and what goes on behind the scenes in Springfield, in addition to some other topics. All programs will be on Zoom at 7 p.m. and we hope to see you. I'd like to turn tonight's program over to Ann Prisland. Ann is our Voter Ready co-lead. Ann's team stays busy year-round with voter registration opportunities in libraries, at farmers markets, at neighborhood festivals, at food pantries, and at citizenship ceremonies. They also keep busy sharing nonpartisan election information. Ann is extremely knowledgeable about voting and election-related topics and is a frequent speaker to civic-minded groups and radio audiences in our area. Ann, take it away.
Thanks so much, Jane, for those kind words. I appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone who's joining us tonight. I'm delighted to be the moderator for our program on the ins and outs of being an election judge. For those of you who have joined us who may not be familiar with the League of Women Voters, wanted to mention that we are a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government by everyone, especially through voter registration and informed voting by all who are eligible. Election judges in our county and elsewhere help ensure that all citizens have fair, free, secure, and accessible elections in accordance with the law. In order for the Champaign County polls to even open and for voting to take place, we need to have trained election judges representing the Democratic and Republican parties serving in our in-person voting locations and in our mail ballot processing center. So how does someone actually become an election judge? What are the qualifications? What training is provided? And what exactly is it that judges do? Before I introduce our two panelists tonight who will help answer these questions and more, just a few housekeeping details. Although league members have generated questions for our panelists, you may have others. Please add your questions succinctly, if possible, to the chat. We'll do our best to leave time after the panel discussion to share as many of those questions as possible and provide the answers. We appreciate it if you would use the chat only for questions to our panelists, not to comment on someone else's question. Let's let our panelists respond. Our Zoom master has muted all attendees, as you may have noticed. Please remain muted through the program and we'll have a chance to get to your questions at the end. This program, like all the ones in Keeping It Local, is being recorded and will be available on the League's YouTube site in about 48 hours. So you're perfectly welcome to mention that to others who weren't able to join us tonight. This evening, we have two experienced members of our County Clerk and Recorder's election division with us. Molly is our county's election judge coordinator. Katie serves as the clerk's communications and outreach coordinator. And in addition to that, she's also responsible for the mail ballot processing center and for the election judges who work there. I've recently learned that both Molly and Katie have been election judges in the past, so they bring that experience to their current role and to our conversation this evening. So Molly and Katie, we're really glad that you're able to join us tonight and look forward to the information that you'll be able to share with us. I thought we'd start, if you would, please, by just providing an overview of the election judge opportunities available in Champaign County. And after that, we'll talk a little bit about the qualifications for serving in those roles. So Molly, I don't know if you want to start, or Katie, or just go back and forth.
We'll see as we go, but first I really wanted to emphasize how important election judges are. Democracy in Champaign County could not happen without our Champaign County election judges. Democracy could not happen in our nation without election judges, and that is regardless of in-person or vote by mail, no matter what each state is doing individually. Election judges, we the people, are integral to this process, which is democracy, and keeping our elections fair, free, and accessible with both parties present. So thank you very much to all of our election judges. Thank you to anyone who's ever been an election judge. Thank you if you're even considering being an election judge, because in addition to the importance of serving, the importance of learning is what keeps a lot of the misinformation, the amount of information you're exposed to as an election judge really conflicts and helps combat the misinformation around the process that we see nationally and then perhaps even locally. So thank you very much to our election judges. Our election judges do so much nationally, but locally, there are some specific opportunities that we have. So the main one at the forefront of everyone's mind and at the forefront of whatever you might see on the media, of course, is going to be our election day election judges. These are the people representing democracy at the polls when you go in to vote. These are the ones that we need most of. These are the ones that see the most traffic. And we appreciate all of our election day election judges. In addition to our election day election judges, we also have early voting election judges, as well as vote by mail election judges. We have poll workers or election judges that serve to help distribute and set up information. Hello, sir. My cat has decided to join us. But there is no lack of opportunity to serve as an election judge locally, whether it be at the polls, through vote by mail, picking up ballots, or help setting up polling locations prior to election day.
That's great. I think many of us might not have known about the other opportunities in addition to serving at the polls, which I'm sure is the one we're most familiar with. Let's focus for a moment on the judges who work at those polling locations. What are the qualifications to serve as that kind of election judge? Molly, Katie?
So what we see most of and what is published on our site, the qualifications, first and foremost, you have to be someone who is registered to vote. You have to be someone who is eligible to vote in Champaign County, unless you are a student or someone else who is visiting on a student basis. Molly, can you elaborate more on the student qualifications?
Oh, am I unmuted? Okay.
You are.
So there are two types of students who can serve as election judges. We have the high school workers. Those tend to, or they have to be either a junior or senior in high school, and then they can come and serve in different capacities. And then if they are a student at Parkland or at U of I, they are able to serve in Champaign County, even if they're registered back home in California or in Cook County. Certainly they can if they would like to get registered to vote in Illinois, but if they would like to be able to vote in the elections back home via vote by mail, they can still serve as an election judge here. And for them, they just have to be a student at one of those universities and meet all of the other qualifications that we have for our election judges.
And are there other qualifications that apply to all election judges, in addition to being a voter and eligible in Champaign County?
Yes, so we have an important one is having a basic computer literacy and being able to use technology. We've moved away from those very heavy, thick paper poll books. All of our registrations are on a computer that is wonderfully set up. To be able to use that, to be able to connect to the printer accurately, to be able to use Slack, which is our main communication back to the office. We also need you to be a citizen of the United States, which if you're a registered voter, you are a citizen of the United States, or you're a high school student if you are not registered. To be of good repute and character and not subject to registration requirements of the Sex Offender Registration Act, to not be a candidate for any office at the election, and not to be an elected precinct committee person, you have to reside in Champaign County and you have to attend the election judge trainings, which for us are on, the bulk of it is online, and pass the test. So it's not a lot, but it is all very important.
And do those qualifications apply to all the roles, Katie, that you described?
So the majority of the judges who are handling is certainly, if you're interacting with voters, you need to be taking the election judge training. To have access to that training, you have to fulfill all of the other requirements. But the only variable one that really changes is whether or not you have to take the full online training. If you're going around and setting up polling locations and mainly just moving large objects for our office, which is extremely appreciated, you don't have to take the full course to be able to move that equipment. However, I do encourage anyone who works for our office in any capacity to look over this training, because it informs you, not just as a potential judge, but also a voter. And then it also informs anything that you would help us do in any capacity in our office. Because even if you're moving large objects for us, you can help understand the impact of each of the objects that you're moving for us if you take our full election judge training.
Mhm. So everybody's eligible to take that training, but it's required of those who are going to be working with the public. Molly, you said that you can't be an election judge if you're a precinct committee person. What if you're a volunteer for a political campaign? Can you still serve as an election judge?
Yes. As long as your name is not on the ballot to be elected, you can serve.
Great, that's good to know. Thank you. We know, and as I mentioned in the beginning, that we need judges who represent both the Republican and the Democratic parties. What are the challenges you found of balancing the election judge pool so that you have enough individuals representing both parties?
So one of the things that we see, and it changes depending on the type of election as far as legal requirements, but our general goal is to have an equal representation of each party at our polling location. This would require an equal number of judges from each party to sign up, complete the training, and sign up to be a judge. So not just take the training, but also be available to work and utilize that training on election day. That might sound simple, but it is a big ask to ask for an equal number of both of those things. And depending on what county you're in, you're going to see a much larger population of one party rather than another, and then a different ratio of the people who are available to serve as an election judge. So it's a continual struggle to balance and see as equal representation as possible in our polling locations in terms of representatives from each party.
So the people who are judges represent the parties. What if someone considers themselves to be an independent? Can they serve as an election judge?
I think that anyone can consider themselves to be anything. Most of it is reliant upon what party's ballot you chose in the primary election. So you can change your mind every primary. I'm not invested in how consistently you vote for one party or another in a primary. However, if you find yourself voting on the primary election in a presidential election, you would then be obligated to serve as a representative for that party in the general election. So for example, if in the most recent primary, I served as a Republican judge, I am then obligated to serve as a Republican judge in the general election.
Okay,
I
so
can
there
change
is
my
some
mind.
history. I'm sorry, Katie, go ahead.
And I can change my mind anytime. You're not married to a particular party as a judge. You don't have to declare when you register. We just go off of what you did most recently in the primary.
Good to know. Thank you for that. One of the things that we all probably know is that judges who serve early voting work a 4-hour shift on the days that they serve. But yet on election day, the judges there must start serving at 5 a.m. and continue all day through the close of polls at 7, and then whatever it takes to do all of the cleanup work and return the documents to the county clerk's office. I'm wondering, do you know why it is in Illinois that those things are different, early voting versus election day?
The most concise answer to that question that I have is that it is simply the law. I don't know whose idea it was. I can only assure you it was not mine. I would suggest if you would like to change that, you can write your local representative to see if we can update that law to reflect what we see with the rules in early voting. But the short answer is I don't know why. They never give a list of reasons next to each law that is made. It would be very convenient for me if they did. But short answer, it is the law.
Well, we know that that is done in other states. So as you said, the recourse is through the legislature, correct?
Correct.
Great. The other question we often get is about compensation. How are election judges compensated?
So we have a few different rates of pay depending on what capacity you're serving as an election judge. The Champaign County Clerk locally has fought and gotten our election judge pay for election day raised from $200 for the day to $220. I know it's only $20, but it's something that we fought very hard for our election judges. We hope to see that continue to increase as the cost of living continues to increase. But for the other rates of pay breakdown, we would encourage you to check out our site, see what roles you're interested in serving in, and then look at that breakdown from there.
Good to know. And high school judges are paid the same, right?
That is my understanding. Molly, do you want to weigh in?
Yes, there is no difference in pay for a high school judge or for someone who is over the age of 18 and out of high school. They all get paid the same. They all have to fill out the same forms. There's no discrepancies.
Okay. And I assume these are tax forms, so taxes are taken out of election judge pay. Is that correct?
Yes. So once you get through the election judge training and we start getting you scheduled, you can either come into our office and pick up the packet of information, or it is available on our website for election judges to make sure that they get their W-4s for state and state and federal, as well as their full. Sorry, I forgot what the word was. The full form for their payment.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate being reminded of the compensation that election judges do get. I know it's different in different counties, so it does depend on the county clerk and the county board, I believe, to make those kinds of decisions. So you were talking about how election judges need to apply for that position. Can you take us through the application process? How does that work?
Go ahead. Okay. So we have a link on our website under the elections tab that says work as an election judge. In a big yellow box at the top, it has the link to where you need to apply, as well as all the qualifications listed below. It'll ask you to fill out a couple questions, your name, your residence, are you a high school judge, your birthday, simple stuff like that. And once we get that in, we get it reviewed, and you'll get an email confirmation saying that we have received your application, and you'll receive an email afterwards once we have processed it.
And on that application, is that where you indicate which political party you would be representing as a judge?
Yes. So it has an option to select either Democrat or Republican. Illinois requires that you declare a party. As Katie said previously, you can change it whichever you're feeling that election. Totally okay. I just need to have a party declaration.
Okay, good to know. And by the way, I noticed that Katie has put some of these links in the chat that will direct people right to where that application information is. And in that application, is there a role that the political parties play, or can anyone just go to your site and apply?
So ideally, in an ideal world, political parties would be distributing this information because I believe one of the main goals, I'm not here to translate law and what the intention of the law was, but I would imagine that one of the main goals in having both parties represented in our polling locations is to make sure that both parties are represented in our polling location. So it's in the party's best interest to make sure they have representatives from their party at each location. So ideally, you would get our application link circulated by local parties. But then, of course, we're also circulating the application because we are very desperately in need of your help. So you'll see other parties representing our link, hopefully distributing our link, but all of it is through our office.
Right, that's great. That one application for everyone is on your office's website. Great. And if you wanted to be considered to do one of those other election judge roles, either working in the mail processing center or serving as someone who picks up the ballots at drop boxes and the post office, do you indicate that on the application in some way? Or is there another way to do that?
So that wouldn't be on the application itself. The application assumes and highlights most our greatest area of need, which is going to be election day and early voting judges. That's where we most want to know everyone's availability and be most sure that they are trained. If you find yourself interested in some of these roles that we don't need as many people for, we would encourage you to send us an email so that we know that you're interested in that role. So it's not a part of the application, but if you would like to highlight a specific area of interest, please email us and we will accommodate.
Great. And Katie or Molly, would you mind putting that email address in the chat as well so people can have access to that?
Absolutely.
One question that somebody asked me was, do I have to apply each time that I want to be an election judge? Say I'd been an election judge in the primary last spring. Do I need to apply again to be considered as an election judge for this fall?
Nope. One application. We do ask that you review the training, and because people's lives change, and once you've applied once, we just ask that you go in, review your training, and then mark your availability based on what is going on in your life at the time. So one application, just go in and make adjustments as needed.
That makes it very easy. Thank you. I'm sure I know the answer to this question, but is it too late to apply to be a judge for this fall's election?
Nope. I will say, to get training completed and to be scheduled by election day, we do need you to be in and have your training done by October 15th to
Okay,
ensure that I
so-
have the ability to get everybody through training and schedule properly as well.
Great. So October 15th is kind of the end date. So I'm sure you would encourage people who are interested to apply sooner rather than later.
Yes,
and then have
please.
time to handle their training, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've mentioned the word training all kinds of times already this evening. So I wonder, Molly, if you could talk us through briefly what kinds of things happen in the training, what judges will learn and be expected to do through the training.
Yeah, so the training is, the majority of it is online. Once you register through the portal, that is where you will log in after we process your application. And it has 7 modules. The videos roughly are about 4 hours, which is in line with state law. They are broken up into some small chunks, and they are done at your own pace. So if you need to set it down and come back to it, that's totally cool. You just need to watch the videos and answer the questions. We will be having 2 in-person training sessions in roughly October, where if you've watched the videos but you didn't have the chance to do early voting, if you want to just get more comfortable with the equipment, you can come in, look at it, touch it, see how it functions before you get to the polling location on election day.
And what are some of the topics that are covered in the training itself?
How to check registration, how to print ballots, check signatures, basic troubleshooting things along the lines of like, hey, the printer jammed, or my computer has a black screen. Is it plugged in? With lots and lots of links of like how to contact us, how to use Slack, all that sort of fun stuff.
So by the time someone's finished with the training, they will be well prepared to handle the role of being a judge at a polling location?
Yes, I will say that sometimes nuanced situations come up if that, we can't account for in the training. So if that happens, you can contact our office and we will most certainly help you. But the broad strokes and the less nuanced things you will be well versed in.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Katie, was there anything about the training that you wanted to add?
Well, what I would add is that since the training is online and self-paced, it gives you a lot of opportunities if you have questions about the training to reach out to us and get a lot of questions answered before you even appear at the polling location. If you think that there are gaps in our connection from one topic to another, there's a great opportunity for you to be able to reach out well in advance, and we would encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity.
So if you want to ask a question about a specific situation, one of those, well, what if this happens? Then the way to do that is to reach out to the office using that email that you provided in the chat.
Yes, and while I'm less inclined to give concrete answers to hypothetical questions, if you have a general question about the way that things work, the theories and the general consensus of how things work is pretty consistent. So I'm confident that we can answer most questions anyone would be able to think of taking training. And we want to make sure everyone is comfortable.
Mhm. And Molly, you said there were opportunities for in-person training. So what would happen then? Would people come to the Brookins Center and observe the way early voting is being handled there? Or how does that work?
So we will have the two in-person trainings. One will be after the polls have closed, so you can see how the polling location is set up and how it all looks in that space. It will be at our office at the Brookins Administrative Center. The other one we have will be during the day in case anybody can't make it to the evening one or they can't make it to the day one. That will be at our election supply building, and we will provide directions to that. It's a hop, skip, and a jump away from our office, and that will have the equipment in less of a actual environment, more of a controlled environment, but you'll still see the equipment, you'll still be able to see how it works. But you'll get the same information at both locations. It's just a matter of what time works best for you.
That's great that you have both, because some people learn fine watching videos or doing things online, but other people need to touch the equipment to see how it works, maybe to try it out themselves to make sure that they know how to use it. So it's great that you have both options. Well, let's assume that someone has applied, gone through the training, successfully taking all the quizzes, and now they're going to be starting to work as an election judge. They work as a member of a team, is that right?
Absolutely. We try as much as possible to make sure that there's a varied amount of experience in our polling locations. So if you're a brand new judge, chances are you're going to be placed with a very experienced judge rather than a sea of new people. We want to make sure that everyone has as much guidance as possible and you're a part of that team. But in addition to being a part of that team of election judges, you're part of our team as a part of our office's team, an extension of our office. So no group of judges is set in a place as an island. We're always consistently available to be able to answer your questions. No judges should feel as if they are on the hook for everything that happens in their polling location. You're there as an extension of our office and we are on your team.
Great, good to know. And while this person is working at the polls, what are the major responsibilities of an election judge? Starting at 5 a.m. or whenever it is that the judges for early voting will be starting. What are their major responsibilities?
So the first and foremost is going to be to open and close the polls. You're going to be responsible for the election materials there at the polls, and you're going to ensure that only qualified voters are able to vote at your location. The biggest piece, or one of the bigger pieces, is to give instructions on the method of voting requested by the voter. So there are a few different ways that people can vote in person, and you need to be prepared to make sure that all of the voters are aware of how that works. You need to be able to give assistance to voters that might require it. tally the votes after the polls are closed and tally the election results over, and that is mainly just by bringing the results to our office.
You said, as you were telling us, you said something about different ways to describe voting opportunities at the polls. What would those be?
Well, we've happened to produce a handy video about all of the different ways that you can vote in person, and I will post that in chat here in a moment. So I don't know if anyone's familiar. When I first started as an election judge in 2016, we had this handy, allegedly handy, voter assistance terminal. And this was used to help people who couldn't physically fill in their paper ballot be able to do so via a machine. This particular machine did not work very well. So the current administration worked to replace all of those machines with some assistance terminals that actually work, and that is known as the Express Vote. The Express Vote has been a really exciting addition to our voting experience here in Champaign County. It allows people with visual needs to be able to complete their ballot more easily. It allows people who maybe can't stand that long to sit down and be able to fill out their ballot more easily. And it allows people who merely like to be comfortable to fill out their paper ballot more easily. And it's important that, and you'll hear me emphasize, it's still a paper ballot. It's not electronic voting. And spreading information about this, not only to the public, for you to know for your personal knowledge, but also the voters that would come in and benefit from that service need to be made aware that it exists and how easy it is to use.
And certainly we have what we would call the traditional paper ballots as well, right?
Right.
That we all know how to fill in those ovals. I don't know how many on this Zoom have used the Express Vote machine. I used it myself just because I was curious and wasn't sure how it would work. It's essentially a ballot marking machine. And I like it because the screen is big and easily read. And once I have told the piece of equipment who I wanted to vote for, I get to review all my choices before actually even printing my paper ballot. So I've appreciated that capability that we have we have those in all of our polling locations. Is that right?
True.
Great. So that leads me to the next question, which is, you mentioned that, or I guess Molly did, that in the not so distant past, but we had big chunks of heavy paper that were used to keep the voters' record. But now it's all done by computer. How has technology changed the role of election judges in Champaign County from your experience and from what you understand from election judges?
So I would say that the main change that's occurred most recently, I began being an election judge in 2016, which wasn't that long ago, but also an eternity ago. But since 2016 to now, we've introduced a program called Slack that's available for election judges. Election judges used to have to call a hotline and wait for one of the 3 or 4 people who were available to pick up their phone to answer their questions there at a polling location, however many there were in 2016. And that's moved from that call program to now Slack, which is a digital messaging system that we're able to use to answer questions more quickly. And this allows people not only to ask questions more quickly, but for our office to give more specific answers with pictures. I can send pictures via the internet. I cannot send you pictures via a phone call. So it's been a really great leap in technology, in my opinion, even just as someone who used to be an election judge, but now someone working and answering the questions, it's much easier and much more accurate for me to do so via Slack. That's the biggest change, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Molly, have you noticed any other changes in technology and how it's affected the election judge's work?
Oh, there we go. I've noticed that, like you said, no more heavy poll books they have to lug around, which is really, really nice. I was an election judge back in 2010. And the great thing about having essentially digital poll books is that people can go to different polling locations. We have universal polling here. So say you work at the Champaign Public Library and you can't get to your home polling location during the election season for whatever reason, or it would just be more convenient to go vote on your break while working at the Champaign Library. You can do that because we can see everybody. If we had those big heavy paper poll books, you were chained to that polling location. And that also assists people who may have difficulties getting to their polling location because of transportation, because of mobility issues, or just because they're a student or they work and it's just difficult to slot time in between work, family life, chores, all that sort of stuff. So being able to stop and go vote while you're running your errands and not being stuck at one location is super, super helpful. And that is probably my most favorite thing, other than the express vote and Slack that has changed. We do also have a few upcoming fun technological changes for our election judges to make their job easier. We're still putting the final touches on it, but they will see it in the fall, and it's very exciting.
Okay, and you're not going to tell us what they are you? Not yet, huh? That's perfectly okay.
No, you have to be an election judge to find out.
Okay. Well, there's an inducement for you. Thank you. One of the things that comes up often is the question of security and election and voting security. I wonder if you could both share with us what's the election judge's role in maintaining security during the voting process?
So, in terms of making sure that the correct person is being processed and identity security, as many people are aware, you don't have to present your ID when you go to vote. However, every person, regardless of whether you're voting by mail or in person, is required to sign when you go in to vote. We have to get a sample of your signature. And you're going to see judges peek at that signature and compare it to a mystery thing on the other side of the screen, which is actually a reference signature that we've gotten from you, the same voter. So once we confirm that we believe we have the same voter in front of us, that's when you sign the book, and we use a reference image of your signature on our file to confirm that you are the same person before you are given a ballot. And that is how we ensure that the correct person is being processed at a polling location.
Great. And are there other things that the judges do to help maintain security throughout the voting process?
The most important part
Yeah, go ahead,
of
Katie. I'm sorry.
The most important part of being an election judge is that piece, making sure the correct person is being processed there at a polling location. And not only to make sure that that person is the correct person, but they are processed correctly because due to technology and the advancements that have been created due to not having to use those paper poll books, once a voter is processed in one location in Champaign County, they are marked as voted everywhere in Champaign County. So as long as you are sure that you have processed the correct person and you have processed them all the way and they get their ballot, that is the election security. That person is marked as voted everywhere in Champaign County and does not have the opportunity to vote again. So as long as you're doing your job and pressing all of the buttons correctly, that is election security for that voter everywhere in Champaign County.
So that if someone was working at a polling location in Urbana, they are looking at the same voter rolls that all the other judges at every polling location are seeing.
Correct.
So
So
I
rather
would
than there
know.
being a separate book at every single precinct, every polling location is sharing one big book digitally.
Right. So I would know if a person standing in front of me has already voted at another location. Is that right?
Or even by mail.
Or by mail?
Regardless of how they voted, they are marked as voted everywhere for everyone in Champaign County.
Well, I assume that occasionally there are questions that come up during the voting process. How do election judges make decisions about issues that come up? Maybe some, concern about does the signature match that you described or some other issue? How do the election judges who are there at the location make decisions?
So a lot of this would be covered in training. There's a specific process when you don't think that a signature that you're looking at, when they sign in the book, there's a process for what to do when you don't believe that matches. There's a process on what to do if a poll watcher doesn't agree that that signature matches or that person should be allowed to vote. There are a lot of black and white step-by-step processes that are covered in training pretty extensively. But if you're unsure of what to do outside of training, or even in training and you just want confirmation, I'll emphasize again, our office is a part of your team and you should always loop us in if you are feeling pressured to make a decision and you're not 100% sure what to do after training. Always reach out to us. You're never on the hook for any particular thing. We're on the hook. So please contact us. We're more than happy to help.
That's good to know. So as a polling judge, I have backup in the office for sure, and from my fellow judges that I'm working with. Is that correct?
That is correct. We never want everyone to feel super pressured or more pressured than they need to be on situations that they're not sure what to do. If you're not sure what to do, the answer is ask us because we'll help you.
Good to know. I'm sure that you both talk with election judges a lot, and I'm wondering if you could share with us, what do election judges tell you are some of the rewarding experiences they've had working as an election judge?
A lot of what I've seen firsthand and I've experienced firsthand is being able to make friendships and grow in knowledge with people regardless of political ideology. Working in a polling location is a perfect opportunity to work with a well-represented group of people and learn about something that's important to us as individuals. Because of course, as you're an election judge, you're doing something that you care about, but it's important not just to you guys individually, but to our community as Champaign County, to your city locally, but then also nationally. So we get to be a part of these two individual experiences as an election judge, but also part of a large national important thing that happens every election. And being able to share it in that experience, regardless of political party, has really been rewarding to me when I was a judge, and it continues to be so on the other side, working as a part of the clerk's office.
Thank you. Molly, your thoughts about that as far as what judges have told you are rewarding experiences?
A lot of them have given feedback in regards to a lot of what Katie said, being able to meet people, talk to people, experience the beauty that are the differences and the similarities between us. I'm sounding really cheesy, but it's true. As just people, when I served as an election judge, I was the youngest person at my polling location, and generally speaking, as someone who was in high school doing this, I would never have talked to anybody who was at my polling location, but we were all there together and it was super fun. And they all, I learned that, just because I wouldn't normally associate with them doesn't mean that they don't have a wicked sense of humor, that just because you might be coming from a different ideology or a political party doesn't mean you don't have the ability to be friends. I've also had a lot of judges just say that it was great to help with the democratic process and feel like they're doing their part to help ensure that everybody has a safe, secure election season, which I also very agree with. Everybody should feel safe and secure when they go to vote.
Thank you. You mentioned that you started as a high school student, as an election judge. And Katie, I think you had also. So I'm curious, how do high school students who get involved being judges take to this role? And how do the voters react to them?
I think that what I've noticed is places where students are very motivated to be active in their community, and it's great to see them do that in a meaningful way that helps the very much larger community. I think that students are very technologically savvy. In places where we see students, we see fast moving lines and quick communication via Slack. I think that places where we see students participate as election judges are places where we see a lot of ease on the team, being able to have an extra younger person there working, especially on the technological side, makes everyone at the location feel much more supported.
Good to know. I hadn't thought about that. So the teenagers often bring a technological ease that perhaps some of the judges who are no longer teenagers may not have, or may not have quite as well. So it's a good blend. Is that what you're saying?
It's true. And then the experience that the younger judges may not have yet, such as how to do a lot of the closing procedures, some of the procedures that haven't changed, but are very much still important, very important. We're able to see that blend of institutional knowledge come in. So the institutional knowledge, even from the younger people, they have institutional knowledge on the basis of how technology works. And then the institutional knowledge of these older judges or more experienced judges who are able to bring a lot of that attitude of seriousness on how the rest of the process works. It's a great blend. I love it.
Good to know. And how do voters seem to respond to high school judges?
Fast judges are fast lines, and I think that voters respond very well to quick lines.
Mhm.
I haven't heard them remark specifically on students, but I've heard them remark specifically on lines. And so I'm willing to make that generalization.
Okay, thank you for that. Molly, a little bit ago, you talked about how voters and judges need to feel safe when they vote. And I'm wondering, can you describe to us some of the safety procedures that might be in place, especially if an election judge feels uncomfortable or perhaps confronted and needs some assistance? What kinds of safety procedures are in place here in Champaign County?
There are a couple different ones. Obviously, if there's any discomfort that comes from what is a real legitimate threat, we encourage them to reach out to emergency services as well as our office to try and handle that. In regards to weather, we have a plan for bad weather depending on if it's still 70 degrees in November or if we're in the midst of a blizzard. And then if any of the discomfort comes from like a voter or a poll watcher, we have processes in place on how to handle that. And if the election judges themselves are having difficulty taking care of the situation or trying to like diffuse the situation, they can reach out to our office and we will come out and help.
Good to know.
So
Thank you.
they are not alone. We have many processes in place and we will come and help.
Great. Thank you for that. Katie, was there anything you wanted to add?
Very quickly, because there's a lot of different sources of discomfort that can happen generally, and then also specifically as it relates to polling locations. So if someone's uncomfortable because of a poll watcher, for example, it's important to know that there is training specifically on what poll watchers are and are not supposed to be doing at a polling location. And that knowledge that is training available as part of the training. So the training that you'll receive will help you be prepared for what you can and should not expect from poll watchers, if that is the source of your discomfort, and then what to do about it. So a lot of these are not in just processes that we have if needed. They're processes that we let you know preventatively. Before you might run into a situation, we have training about this specifically. So again, any questions that you might think of as you take that training, let us know, because preventative knowledge is the best kind. Don't wait for the emergency to happen is our attitude. So, and I believe that's reflected in our training. And if you don't believe that to be true, reach out because that is our goal.
Good to know. Thank you. Those are the questions that the league members had prepared for Molly and for Katie. And I really appreciate you both answering them as completely and fully as you did. They were great specifics on all the aspects of election judge, from, first of all, what are the qualifications? How do you apply? What's the training? And what's it really like to serve? I know that we have quite a few questions in the chat. We do have a few minutes. So we've asked Ann Prisland. Ann, I think you've been monitoring the chat. If you would start with the questions that maybe we haven't quite addressed in this conversation, or perhaps need a little more detail.
Okay. I don't think we heard about this. Can election judges request where they will be assigned to work on election day?
Absolutely. We want to know the preferences of our election judges. While we do take into account where you are located geographically to where our polling locations are, if you have a preference, reach out to us via email. So after you mark your availability, follow up with email if you have preferences on the specific role you want to serve in. So if you want to do something other than serve on election day or at a polling location for early voting, that would be an opportunity to email us, but then also a specific location, also include that in an email to us.
Okay, thank you.
I would
Um,
like to add quickly for that, that to some, we try to accommodate, but sometimes it is a bit difficult based on ratios to ensure that we stay within the law. So if you request to go to a polling location, but it already has everybody we need for the ratios, but there's one close by, we try to accommodate as best we can, but I cannot 100%, 110% guarantee that if you say, I want to work at Meadowbrook Church and only Meadowbrook Church, that I can give you Meadowbrook Church. I will try my best, but if my ratio is filled there and I need you somewhere else that is not like Muhammad, we won't send you wildly out of your way. I may have to put you there. So I do ask for some flexibility. I would love to be accommodating to everybody, but I do have to also work within given laws.
Sure. And that question was asked within the context of young folks who maybe aren't either, don't have transportation or, whatever, or they take a bus or whatever. So, but if they can send an email and ask, that's probably great.
Yes, especially for the high school judges, we try to keep them as close to home as possible, both
Yeah.
for their comfort and their parental comfort. I've had a couple judges whose parents express that they wish to keep them close to home.
Sure.
If you can only get to certain locations on the bus, please let me know. I will make that accommodation.
Okay. All right. If you pull an independent ballot in the primary, for example, with nonpartisan election referendums, can you still serve as an election judge?
Absolutely. So there are people serving as an election judge that haven't necessarily voted in the most recent primary. And that would just be one of the instances where you would select a party on your application. So we wouldn't assume that you would go with your primary. We would give you the opportunity to select something else.
Okay. All right. Is the election authority able to offer live wait times at polling locations, either online or at the locations with long wait times?
That would be lovely. There are election authorities who have been able to get the resources to provide people with that ability. I'm sure that that is on our list of goals, but that particular service does not exist in Champaign County yet.
Okay. Is there a contingency plan for carrying out an election day with an area-wide electrical and/or internet blackout?
Yes. So we're required not only to have our digital poll books, but also emergency poll books for the local area at each polling location. And these
Okay.
would be available on a desktop for folks to reference, even if your laptop wasn't plugged in, and even if you were not connected to the internet.
Okay. And then one last question. I did not hear you answer this, so tell me if you already did. Sorry, I lost it here. Oh, do students, high school students, have to have a certain GPA or maintain a certain GPA in order to be an election judge?
Yes, so they do have to maintain at minimum a 3.0 GPA on a 4.0 scale.
Okay.
If they go over, fantastic, but as long as it is at least a 3.0, they can serve.
Okay. And you guys must have a way of finding that, yeah, figuring it out. Okay. I don't think I missed any questions, did I, Ann?
Ann, I think I see two additional ones.
Oh,
One was about training. How many sessions do judges need to complete? And I think, Molly, you said there are 7 modules?
Yes,
And,
there are 7 modules.
and you do it at your own pace, but I think you told us that you
Mhm.
need to have that done if we want to work as an election judge by October 15th.
Mhm.
And the training, you just follow the modules. Can you do it in different order or does it matter?
Yes, they're fairly self-contained. However, it is good to be able to go back and reference in case something came up in the previous module that is mentioned in passing in the following module. So I would prefer everybody do it in order just to make sure we're getting the information succinctly. But if you have time for a 10-minute video, go for the 10-minute video. I'm not going to poo-poo anyone for doing that.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. There was one question too, Katie, you had talked about I guess both of you, the express vote machine, which as we know is a ballot marking machine. But some people may be nervous about that and aren't sure that their vote recorded on, or by using that machine, that their vote would be actually counted. How does that work? Can you describe that part of the process a little bit in a little more detail?
So in the same way a tabulator reads the ovals of what you select on a traditional paper ballot, the express vote produces a ballot that you can read for yourself the same way you would a traditional ballot. You can confirm that the correct ovals have been filled in. On an express vote ballot, after you mark the ballot digitally, it prints out all of the choices that you just made ink on paper. Then the tabulator reads those choices through a barcode rather than ovals being filled. But the process works the same way, and these are tested publicly. We're obligated to do a public test to ensure that these ballots are read the way that they are meant to be read. This includes express vote ballots. And so keep an eye out. We publish a notice regarding these public tests well in advance.
Thank you for that. And I'm glad you mentioned the tabulator test. That is done every election prior to the election. The League of Women Voters is on an email list from the clerk's office. So we do get notification of when that test is, and any member of the public can go and observe, correct?
Correct.
And I think
If
in
I'm
the
not
past, what we've
mistaken,
done, pardon?
I believe if I'm not mistaken, you have been present for those.
I have indeed. And I would recommend it to others. I learn a lot by going there and seeing how the tests are done. And it's one of those steps that we all can take to boost our own confidence in the election system. And one question that just came in, are the early voted ballots processed after the polls close on election day or during election day?
So early voting ballots are tabulated there at the polling location when you put it in the tabulator. However, no one knows what's in that tabulator until 7 o'clock on election day when we count all of the votes. So on election evening, what you see posted on our website, as soon as we process it, is the early voting votes and our election day votes. We don't know those numbers before everyone else knows those numbers. They're on election night.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. I believe, Ann, thank you. We've covered the questions that were also in the chat. So I wanted to thank everyone who provided questions. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to address them. And if other things occur to you, by all means, take advantage of that email address that Katie posted, where you can send your questions to the Elections Division. And at least from my own experience, you'll get prompt and complete answers. So Katie and Molly, thank you so much for joining us tonight and for sharing your information. You both are very knowledgeable and explain things not in legalese. Thank you very much. So we all appreciate that as well. Thank you for your work. And I know that part of our purpose tonight is to help all of us understand the role of election judges better, and really to perhaps consider for ourselves if we haven't been an election judge before, consider doing it. And we welcome the opportunity for all of you to share this information with people you know for whom this might be a really good opportunity. Thank you both again, Molly and Katie, for kicking off our Keeping It Local series this year. Ann, thank you for being our Zoom master. And thanks to everyone who participated tonight. We appreciate your involvement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.